Hey everybody, welcome back to Political Doublespeak. Today I'll be touching upon an article that is talking about censorship in the media. More importantly, media as far as the ownership of radio and talk shows on the radio. So with that being said, the article I've pulled is from the Washington Post, so this is a NewsGuard certified article, and let's get right into it. So the article basically says that talk radio owner orders conservative post to temper election fraud rhetoric. So after months of stoking anger about alleged election fraud, one of America's largest talk radio companies has decided on an abrupt change of direction. Cumulus Media, which employs some of the most popular talk radio hosts in the United States, has told its on-air personalities to stop suggesting that the election was stolen from President Trump or else face termination. A Cumulus executive issued the directive on Wednesday just as Congress met to certify Joe Biden's election victory, and an angry mob of Trump supporters marched on the Capitol, overwhelming police and briefly occupying the building. The thing I see about this so far is that there's two major problems with these statements, or as far as I'm concerned, is what I see. I try to fall right down the middle. I try to look at both sides. I try to see what's going on, what both teams are saying. I'll dabble in a little bit of the mainstream to see what the mainstream narrative is, and then I'll dabble all over the internet to see what different groups are saying. The thing I see from the, let's say, the sideline perspective or the side of the baseball field perspective here is that I'm not seeing both sides be represented very well, you know? I can understand the frustration on the side of the Trumpers because the things that were brought to light were very concerning. You know, I'm very law-based. I would rather see, you know, things turn out the proper way in the courts. That reassures the citizens that the effective process is working, and also reassures everybody that we can count on our checks and balances to do their job properly. So within the past couple months, I'd say that in that being the way that I base my judgment on things, I personally felt a little concerned about things that were coming to light, as well as wanting to know about certain other topics that started to come to light that sort of gotten brushed to the side. One of the major problems is that the election fraud wasn't brought into the public in a way where it was clear and transparent, so it would seem obvious to anyone that the reason alone would raise the question amongst the voters, you know. But instead we kind of take a almost football team-based perspective on it, where everybody wants to kind of like argue amongst each other but not really look at the details. With censoring information via that it's right or wrong, it never gets a chance to publicly be disproven if it can be. Forcing a conversation underground instead of facing it with fact head on only causes the issue to grow in question and doesn't extinguish the flames of curiosity, be it design or not. I'm not condoning violence. I'm only pointing out the obvious frustrations and hope to shine a light to others of why the tensions are building. If we could have clear, open conversations about the issue at hand without one side calling the other stupid or vice versa, we'd more likely be able to see all the different viewpoints and be able to find a common ground between the two. But that's also me looking at the situation with rose-colored glasses on to an extent. The article continues. It says, we need to help induce national calm now. Brian Phillips, executive vice president of content for Cumulus, wrote an internal memo reported by the Inside Music Media. Cumulus is a program syndication arm of Westwood One and will not tolerate any suggestion that the election has not ended. The election has been resolved and there are no alternate acceptable paths. Yeah. The memos add, if you transgress this policy, you can expect to separate from the company immediately. A Cumulus representative did not respond to a repeated request on comment on Sunday. Once again, this is a double-edged sword for anybody. You know, you have a job, you work for a company that likes to wear its politics on its sleeve, and you don't necessarily align with those politics, but you enjoy your job, you enjoy going to work, you enjoy that company. It's getting tough in America right now just to, you know, fall down the center and not want to really represent your politics on your sleeve, like, so to say, somebody else, and still just live a normal life. You know, like, where do the people in the center fall? Where do the people who aren't extremely political or extremely leaning in either direction fall? You know, not everybody just falls into these two extremist categories. Going along with the censoring of the media, I also feel like this is kind of what is happening to the population, is we're getting sinkholed into these two categories where a lot of people fall really in the center of the two parties. You know, they like a little bit of the one side, they like a little bit of the other side. I feel like that's how it mostly projects, but with the media projecting everything the way that it does and framing it the way that it does, it's in a way funneling everybody down these two channels of either you're this one way or you're this other way, which I don't believe is a very fair look at our political system, because everybody has many differing viewpoints and it's very fluid. The article continues. It says the new policy is a stunning corporate clampdown on the kind of provocative and even inflammatory talk that has long driven the business model of Cumulus and other talk show broadcasters. And it came as Apple, Google, and Amazon cut off essential business services to Parler. Again, more censoring. What is cutting off the conversation going to do? If you feel somebody's wrong, let them be wrong out loud. At least you can point it out and have a conversation about it and get to the bottom of it if you're a productive person. The pro-Trump social media network, where users have promoted falsehood about election fraud and praised the mob that assaulted the Capitol. Apple and Google removed the Parler app from offering for its smartphone, while Amazon suspended it from its web-based hosting. And which is funny here, when you read this bottom section, I almost just skipped over it. It says Amazon founder and chief executive Jeff Bezos, who also owns the Washington Post. So he's basically saying it's okay for you to have this one form of media that I tell you that is okay for you to have because I own it. But if you want to go on and share ideas freely on Parler, you are a right-wing extremist. Now, that sounds a little silly, doesn't it? To put it that way, because not everybody joining Parler is a right-wing extremist. Not everybody joining Parler is right-wing. There is liberals, there is statists, there's populists, there's, many different political viewpoints falling under free speech. And these people just want to talk and conversate and get their thoughts out in the open without having to worry about stepping on a political nail that's going to slow them down. Since the election, Cumulus has remained silent, while its most popular hosts, which include Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, and Dan Bongino, sorry if I butchered that, have amplified Trump's lies that the vote was rigged or in some way fraudulent. Once again, there is no problem questioning your voting process. If there is a legal avenue and there is a means to question it routinely within your democracy and your government, then questioning the outcome of a contest is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You think the framers of the Constitution sat there and said Congress has no choice to accept the votes, even if there's fraud, even if there's some court order, even if some legislator has violated the Constitution, Levin said as his voice rising in a shout. Atlanta-based Cumulus owns 416 radio stations in 84 regions across the country. Many of its stations broadcast a talk format, a medium that has been dominated by conservative points of view for decades. In addition to its national personalities, it employs local talk radio hosts in many of its markets. Cumulus' biggest station includes WMAL in Washington, KABC in Los Angeles, WLIS in Chicago, and KGO in San Francisco, all of which air a news talk format. Rush Limbaugh, perhaps the biggest star of the conservative talk, is syndicated by other company premier networks through his program is heard on many Cumulus-owned stations. Limbaugh isn't subject to Cumulus's memo. The memo appears to reflect the reality that voters, presidential electors, courts, and now Congress have accepted or certified that Biden won the election and is president-elect. It may also be an attempt to cool down emotions that were led on Wednesday's invasion of the Capitol. Invasion, I put that very lightly. And to mollify advertisers that are concerned about being associated with programs that could be inciting listeners to violence. But it also reveals some of the hidden corporate hand behind what is said and discussed on talk radio programs, rather than a medium of free-thinking individuals expressing passionately held beliefs. The memo reminds that hosts are subject to corporate mandates and control. To not recognize that a corporate imperative goes into all media, said Michael Harrison, the publisher of Talk Magazine, which covers talk radio. Corporations have always called the tune ultimate. Everyone pays attention to the guys at the top and always has. Talk radio host Harrison said, never expected their critiques of the election to get out of hand in the manor seen Wednesday. Cumulus and other broadcaster companies recognize they're in the hot seat right now because the national eye is on them, he said. Asked how hosts who have repeatedly promoted Trump's claims of fraud can now credibly flip to acceptance, Harris said, I would hope they put their personal feelings aside and come clean with their listeners. I encourage them to pursue the truth and to tell their audience something that Trump may not like. And that's what's weird about this is that, this guy goes ahead and says that, most of what everybody's saying comes from the top, but then also in the same breath blames all of these people and says that they need to be held accountable in order to tell their listeners something that Trump may not like. A lot of the people that I were listening to weren't saying go out and do anything crazy. I mean, they were saying go out, protest. Everybody was, the general vibe I was getting from the internet at the time was that everybody was going to go out and it was going to be a large protest, not, you know, mob into the building. Where that line fades is where things get hazy, you know, and a lot of details blur. And then that's where people don't want to listen either. Like, were some of those undercover Antifa? Weren't some of those undercover Antifa? Who was who? What was what? What was planned? Was it expected to get crazy so that the laptops could be grabbed? There's so many questions up in the air right now. There's so much that isn't being covered right now. I guess in the end, that's stuff that only time will tell. Let's see. However, there's some question to be whether stars such as Levin will comply with the recent indict, and whether Cumulus will discipline them if they don't. On his syndicated radio program on Thursday, a day after Cumulus sent its memo and Trump supporters breached the Capitol, Levin didn't seem to be backing off. It appears nothing has changed in 24 hours. He said on the air, not a damn thing. The never Trumpers, the rhinos, the media, same damn thing. He went on and add, I'm not stirring up a damn thing. Everything I say is based on principle and mission. Everything is based on liberty, family, faith, the Constitution. My enemies and my critics can't say the same. And that's where there's a huge gray area in this whole entire argument. It's that the one side, what they're arguing for is so vast and so beyond the public's knowledge, you know, as far as the laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop goes, as far as, you know, any of these little details that have gotten shoved underneath or behind the veil and then have come back and then gotten shoved behind the veil again. There's a lot of questions to be answered right now. And like I said, I guess all we can really say is that time will tell. But as far as censoring and media goes, bouncing back to the main subject, I really feel like this sets a bad precedent as far as our democracy goes, because we only have two parties realistically at the moment. I mean, there's a small fraction of the country that is for the third party, and I believe in the third party, or at least the potential for a third party if, you know, we could raise that kind of awareness. But as it stands right now, we are majorly a two-party system, or we base a lot of our elections on the two parties. So just to completely disenfranchise an entire party, an entire movement of voice, doesn't really set a great precedent for American freedoms and the freedom of speech. I'm hoping that as time goes on, this loosens up and this isn't something that is continual amongst our media, because people need to have the voice. Like I said, even if you voice an opinion that others don't agree with, it should still be able to be a voice. That's what America's all about. You know, we should be open to debate. That's one of our founding principles, you know, debating what you believe is right or wrong with somebody else. And we have the freedom to do that. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. Sorry that this video carried on a little bit longer than I expected. Everybody stay frosty out there and have a good one.